Menace 2. Society wasn't a movie. It was a warning. The cast looked like survivors in 1993, but time proved otherwise. Now, in 2026, their real stories reveal how many never made it out alive. Tyrin Turner as Cain Lawson. Born July 17, 1972, Tyrin Turner is a Los Angeles native whose life would become inseparable from the city's harsh realities. Just 21 years old when Menace 2 Society was released in 1993, he carried the film as Cain Lawson, a young man raised inside violence, fully aware of his fate yet unable to outrun it. The role made Turner an instant symbol of early 90s urban cinema, but it also sealed his first wound. Despite critical praise, Hollywood quickly reduced him to the very world he portrayed. Offers arrived slowly, almost always orbiting crime, gangs, or street trauma, while peers from the same era moved into broader dramatic territory. He appeared in Poetic Justice and later found steadier ground in television with Chicago Hope and Sons of Anarchy, yet none matched the cultural weight of Cain. The gap between recognition and opportunity quietly widened, breeding frustration rather than reinvention. As the years passed, Turner's career reflected a deeper industry failure. The inability to imagine black leads beyond their most painful archetypes. While others escaped the shadow of typecasting, Turner remained tethered to it, watching a performance that defined a generation slowly eclipse the actor behind it. By 2026, Tyrin Turner is 54 years old. He continues to act selectively, teaches, and engages with independent projects. Larenz Tate as O-Dog. Larenz Tate, born September 8, 1975 in Chicago, Illinois, grew up far from the streets he would one day embody on screen. He was only 17 years old when Menace 2 Society premiered in 1993, yet his portrayal of O-Dog, a volatile, trigger-happy force of pure chaos. Hollywood quickly saw Tate not as a gifted teenager with range, but as violence incarnate. Scripts arrived that offered more guns, more rage, and fewer dimensions, while he quietly resisted becoming trapped inside a caricature he hadn't chosen. Instead of riding the shock value, Tate slowed down, stepping away from the spotlight and carefully rebuilding his image through emotionally grounded roles in Dead Presidents and later Love Jones, where vulnerability replaced menace and proved he could carry romance, depth, and restraint. Turning down lucrative but limiting roles meant years without momentum, while peers chased faster fame. Yet the choice protected him from the burnout and self-destruction that consumed so many faces of 1990s urban cinema. Over time, Tate re-emerged as a steady presence in television and film, earning respect rather than headlines through projects like Power, where his controlled intensity echoed O-Dog, but finally on his own terms. As of 2026, Larenz Tate is 51 years old, still active and selective, and one of the few Menace 2 Society stars who escaped the fate the film warned about by refusing to let one role define his life. Samuel L. Jackson as Tate Lawson. Born on December 21, 1948 in Washington, D.C., and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Samuel L. Jackson was 44 years old when Menace 2 Society premiered in 1993. He appeared briefly as Tate Lawson, Cain's drug-addicted violent father whose unsettling presence lingered long after he left the screen. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Jackson battled severe cocaine and heroin addiction, spiraling through arrests, financial collapse, and professional invisibility. His talent was undeniable, yet opportunity remained elusive as addiction repeatedly derailed his progress. Even after powerful performances in Jungle Fever, where he portrayed a crack addict with brutal honesty, his career hung by a thread. Rehab and the risk of permanent obscurity loomed closer than stardom. The turnaround came not with instant fame, but with discipline and endurance. Clean and focused, Jackson rebuilt himself role by role, transforming personal chaos into controlled intensity. Breakthrough performances in Pulp Fiction and later Jackie Brown didn't erase the past. They reframed it, turning lived destruction into one of the most commanding screen personas in modern cinema. What once nearly killed him became the fuel for reinvention. By 2026, Samuel L. Jackson is 77 years old. A living Hollywood legend, he continues to work relentlessly across blockbuster franchises and prestige films. Jada Pinkett Smith as Ronnie. Jada Pinkett Smith was born September 18, 1971 in Baltimore, Maryland. She was just 21 years old when Menace to Society premiered in 1993, portraying Ronnie, a young woman determined to escape the gravitational pull of street violence before it swallowed her whole. Through the mid-1990s, she steadily rose with roles in Set It Off and Scream 2, proving she could balance toughness with vulnerability. Yet success arrived alongside pressure. As her public profile grew, so did scrutiny, not just of her work, but of her personal life. Her marriage to Will Smith placed her under a microscope. Few actors survive unscathed, turning private struggles into public spectacle. Over the years, that exposure hardened into something more corrosive. Confessions about depression, emotional detachment, and marital fractures fueled relentless media cycles, while internet backlash reshaped her image from thoughtful actress to polarizing figure. Projects continued, but the narrative around her often drowned out the performances themselves. In 2026, Jada Pinkett Smith is 55 years old. Still active as an actress, producer, and public figure, she remains influential but scarred. Her legacy defined not only by talent, but by the cost of living honestly in a world that rarely forgives it. Anthony Johnson, as Tony. Born February 1, 1966, Anthony Johnson was a Compton, California. He was 27 years old when Menace to Society was released in 1993, appearing as Tony, a loud, reckless presence whose humor barely masked the danger surrounding him. Johnson's early career leaned heavily on comedy, earning him recognition through roles in House Party and later Friday, where his physical humor and expressive face made him instantly memorable. But behind the laughs, his life followed a harsher rhythm. As the 1990s faded, opportunities thinned, typecasting tightened, and the industry's attention drifted elsewhere. Away from cameras, Johnson struggled with alcohol abuse, a battle that quietly intensified as work became sporadic and financial pressure grew. Johnson moved in and out of minor roles, stand-up appearances, and brief returns to public view, never fully regaining the momentum of his early success. Friends later acknowledged that addiction had taken a heavy toll on his health, gradually weakening his body long before the public noticed anything was wrong. The laughter he once delivered so effortlessly became harder to sustain as real life closed in. Anthony Johnson passed away on September 6, 2021, at the age of 55 in a hospital in Los Angeles County. His death was attributed to natural causes following years of health complications. Bill Duke as Mack. Bill Duke, born February 26, 1943, in Poughkeepsie, New York, came to acting through discipline rather than glamour. He was 50 years old when Menace to Society premiered in 1993, portraying Mack, the hard-edged yet morally grounded father figure who tried and ultimately failed to pull Cain away from a life already in motion. Long before that role, Duke had built a reputation as a commanding screen presence, appearing in films like Predator and Commando, often cast as soldiers, authority figures, or men shaped by violence. Yet the power he projected on screen masked a quieter struggle off it. Hollywood repeatedly confined him to the same narrow archetype, limiting opportunities to explore emotional depth while younger faces replaced him. Rather than disappear, Duke redirected his fight. He moved behind the camera, becoming a respected director and producer, where he could finally control the stories being told. Projects such as A Rage in Harlem and later television work allowed him to reshape narratives about black masculinity that acting roles rarely permitted. The transition was not celebrated with awards or headlines, but it preserved his creative voice when acting alone no longer could. By 2026, Bill Duke is 83 years old. Still active behind the scenes, he remains a survivor of Hollywood's erasure, remembered as much for his quiet resilience as for the authority he once commanded on screen. MC Eiht as AWACS. Born Aaron Tyler on May 22, 1971, MC Eiht was 22 years old when Menace 2 Society was released in 1993. A Compton native, he appeared as AWACS not as a trained actor, but as a raw street presence that blurred the line between performance and lived reality. At the time, MC Eiht was already rising in West Coast hip-hop as a core member of Compton's Most Wanted, his music steeped in raw narratives of gang life and survival. Menace 2. Society amplified that image rather than expanding it. The film did not open doors to acting careers or reinvention. Instead, it locked him more tightly into a violent persona that the industry consumed but never intended to nurture. As rap and film both sensationalized street authenticity, Eiht found himself celebrated for truthfulness while quietly boxed in by it. While peers chased crossover fame, MC Eiht doubled down on music, continuing to release albums that stayed loyal to his origins, even as commercial attention faded. That loyalty preserved credibility, but it also meant carrying the weight of an image he could never fully set down, one shaped by survival, expectation, and the constant demand to remain real. Now, MC Eiht is 55 years old, still active in music and respected as a West Coast hip-hop elder, a living reminder of how closely art can mirror reality. Charles S. Dutton as Mr. Butler. Charles Stanley Dutton was born on January 30, 1951, on the east side of Baltimore, Maryland. He was 42 years old when Menace 2 Society premiered in 1993, portraying Mr. Butler, the weary school counselor who still believed education might save children the streets had already claimed. As a teenager in the late 1960s, Dutton was convicted of manslaughter after killing a man during a violent altercation and was sentenced to prison. What could have ended his life instead reshaped it. While incarcerated, he found discipline through boxing and discovered purpose through reading and theater, slowly transforming rage into focus. Upon release, he pursued education relentlessly, earning degrees from Towson University and Yale School of Drama, a journey few believed possible for a former inmate. Hollywood recognized the gravity he carried. Roles in Alien 3 and the television series Rock drew directly from his authority and emotional weight, never flashy but deeply grounded. Yet his past was never fully erased. It lingered beneath every performance, giving his characters credibility that couldn't be taught. As of 2026, Charles S. Dutton, now 75, remains a respected actor, author, and mentor, with his legacy defined by one of Hollywood's most remarkable personal transformations. Brandon Hammond as 5-year-old Cain. Born February 6, 1984, Brandon Hammond is a Baton Rouge, Louisiana native whose childhood unfolded almost entirely in front of a camera. He was only 9 years old when Menace 2 Society premiered in 1993, portraying the 5-year-old version of Cain, an innocent child already absorbing the violence that would later define his fate. Throughout the 1990s, he worked steadily in emotionally demanding projects, earning critical praise and award nominations for performances that carried an unusual gravity for someone so young. Films like Waiting to Exhale and Space Jam followed, positioning him as one of the most promising child actors of his generation. At just 13 years old, Hammond was diagnosed with Castleman disease, a rare and potentially life-threatening autoimmune disorder that attacks the lymphatic system. The illness brought chronic pain, fatigue, and repeated hospitalizations at the exact moment his career should have transitioned into adulthood. As treatments intensified, auditions slowed, and Hollywood's interest faded without ceremony. By 2026, Brandon Hammond is 42 years old. Having stepped away from acting, he lives privately, remembered for performances that revealed profound emotional intelligence far beyond his years, and for a career quietly interrupted by a battle few ever knew he was fighting. Reginald Ballard as Clyde. Born January 13, 1965, Reginald Ballard is a Galveston, Texas. He was 28 years old when Menace II Society premiered in 1993, appearing as Clyde, a small but chilling street role that added weight to the film's atmosphere of inevitability. Unlike some of his co-stars, Ballard never chased instant stardom. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, he worked steadily in television and film, carving out a niche as a dependable character actor. Appearances in projects such as Martin and later The Bernie Mac Show revealed a different side: controlled humor, timing, and restraint. Yet the shadow of street-oriented roles never fully lifted. Like many actors hovering just outside leading man territory, Ballard faced long stretches of invisibility between roles, adapting to an industry that rewards extremes but forgets consistency. His career became a lesson in endurance rather than ascent, marked by steady work instead of defining breakthroughs. Now Reginald Ballard is 61 years old. Still active as an actor and known to a generation of television audiences, he represents the quieter reality of Menace II Society's legacy, 33 years after Menace II. Society first hit the screen, its violence no longer feels fictional. It feels prophetic. Some escaped, some vanished, and others never truly made it out alive, their real lives echoing the warnings the film tried to leave behind. Which journey stayed with you the longest? Share your thoughts below and follow along as we continue uncovering the untold stories behind cinema's most unforgettable worlds.